No.
Oh, this is from me to you. Oh, shit, I don't want to freak out.
It's 1:30, it's time to start this work session. Thanks, Jim. Ernie, let's begin with you. Identify yourself for the record, please.
Bernie Hall, Anchorage Assembly.
Debbie Yosianda.
Jennifer Johnson.
Dick Trainee.
Sylvie Rachel.
Paul Holman, Assembly.
Harriet Drummond Assembly.
Marty Smith, ML&P.
Mayo Johnson, ML&P.
Johnny Gibbons,
Thanks. Well, this one deals with subsection 22 site selection, according to the record. So who's going to be presenting?
Marty and I.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. Time's yours.
Okay, well, we are going to need to build a new substation to serve Midtown. So this will step you through the process. What's the picture down there? Okay, this will step you through the process of why we need a substation, various sites we've looked at, the analysis that we've done on the sites. But basically, this is an additional substation in Midtown. It's critical because of the ongoing growth in the area, and as it develops and redevelops. Also, that plays into this is the new generation that's going to be out by the Chugach Electric headquarters that we own 30% of. So the area that we serve is in need of a substation because we are getting overloaded and because we have to rebuild one of the substations that is currently feeding Midtown, which is substation 16 over on Telephone Avenue near ACS, the old ATU building. And it was built in 1971. It's an old substation, but we cannot take that down for prolonged maintenance, rebuilding, upgrade until we have another substation online. So reliability is also an issue. We maintain 4 nines of reliability. That's pretty impressive, even for a utility in the lower 48, let alone up here in Alaska. And it is very important because of our climate. We serve the military. Our operating parameters allow us to carry one substation out of service for maintenance and another that can be non-functioning due to an equipment failure. So we can carry on with 2 substations down. But sub 16 was built in 1971. As I said, it's 40 years old. The distribution breakers are old. The transmission protection is old. It's getting to the point where it needs to be rebuilt, and we cannot take that substation down for prolonged maintenance and maintain our reliability without first constructing another substation. This is the area we're talking about where our reliability is at risk and needing another substation due to increasing load. And it is served by 2 substations, sub 7 and sub 16, that currently serve these areas. You can see the normal switching configuration on there. But we need another substation in that area.
I'd like to just focus on this slide for just a minute. And something that Miles said on the previous slide about how ML&P operates. Our system is designed to operate in the environment that we have to take one substation down. We can transfer that load to other substations. That's a guarantee. What we then have to do is, if we're down for maintenance, have to have the ability if, under contingency scenarios, if there's another situation that causes a failure somewhere in the system, to be able to switch those loads to different substations. Right now with sub 16, the way it is and the loads we're encountering in the Midtown area, we can do that maintenance outage for a little while. But what we can't do is that second contingency. If something else fails, there's going to be people that aren't coming back to power because we don't have that, due to the growth in this Midtown area, we don't have that capability without this new substation being built to carry the new load.
And that is about 20 to 30% of ML&P's total load is in this Midtown area. Site parameters. We need to look for a site for the new substation and have been doing so. It needs to be located along Arctic Boulevard. We have an existing transmission line down there between Benson Boulevard and 36. The substation footprint needs to be 120 by 120. Easements, if necessary, must be achievable. We prefer not to condemn if unnecessary. The site needs to be readily available for acquisition. And the cost needs to be reasonable considering the project cost benefits of having the substation online by December of 2012 when the SPP plant will be in service, so we can take that power. Other evaluation factors for the site is that go into the total costs. Because the land purchase alone isn't the total cost, you have to consider the easements that will be required for the various sites, the cost to bring in transmission lines and distribution feeders. Some of the sites have existing structures that will need demolition. Each substation site, because it would have a slightly different shape and the way things are brought into it, would have different substation equipment, which can affect the cost slightly. We need to consider risk because some of the sites have more risk than others. We need to relocate other utilities like CEA lines in one case, and the time delay cost of having the substation available and online before or at the time that the SPP plant comes on is important. This is an overall view of the site locations that are being considered. We've looked at 9 of the sites. 4 of them will be discussed in this presentation. The other 5 have unwilling sellers, so we will not be discussing those sites.
I'll cover who we had to work with because we don't go out and buy land nor do the evaluations. We actually,
No.
this is not a consolidated thing. This is something that city services we have to use and we do use.
Yes. We didn't do this ourselves. We made suggestions, but the real estate services, Susie Page over there, has done most of the work as far as looking for the land. Site 8 is vacant land. It's on Benson Boulevard between Benson and 30th. It's to the east side of Chichaco Street. And there's nothing on that land at this point. With that site, and we've mocked up a picture of what it would look like, we need to bring in 3 transmission circuits to this substation, which is a little unusual, but that's the way it needs to be for our system. So there would have to be 2 pole lines down Benson Boulevard. The minimum easement required would be 30 feet wide on the ground, if not more, and with an additional aerial easements, which would make it about a 50-foot easement, and as you can see, it covers quite a bit of property getting into that site. We would be bringing those lines in from Arctic, which is on the left-hand side of the slide. Okay, the selling price is $700,000 for 5 lots. It's under an acre, and the assessed value is $555,700. We don't have an appraised value on that site. The cost of the transmission line along Benson would be over $2 million. The cost of the easements, or the land purchase for transmission easements along Benson, would run close to $900,000 to $1 million, and add to the timeline considerably to start work on that site. And the estimated constructed substation cost is close to $14 million. And we have reason to believe that we would have to condemn some land for easements on this particular route in bringing in the transmission line. Site 3 is, we call the Party World site. It's on the southwest corner of 36th and Arctic, which is across the street from our service area, but that is okay with us. There are a lot of, well, we'll go into, this is the way we would have to feed this site. There are some problems with the site. Number one, the site is small. We would have to be tearing down the Party World building. It would require, one of the biggest problems would require boring underneath 36th Avenue for the distribution feeders. Now, running down the middle of 36th Avenue is a 60-inch culvert with the Fish Creek diversion in there. We would probably have to go down at least 18 feet, which would make a heck of a bore pit. This bore pit picture isn't exactly the best because it doesn't show that it would have to be wide and deep to get the machine down there and a ramp to take the machine down for the boring. We would be open trenching across Arctic, as well as bringing 3 transmission lines there across Arctic. And when you bore that deep, it also affects the capacity of your underground cable. The deeper you go, the less it can distribute the heat, and it would require larger and more and non-standard cables. And so we would be affecting that area significantly with traffic disruption. There are about 400 businesses that are affected by that. As you know, in the last few years, they've reworked that area. They're going to be in there in about 2013-14 again. And the business community, you have to coordinate very closely with them. The Public Works Department found that they needed to set up a website, use Twitter. They were meeting with the business community once a week on what was going on there. They had to have special signage how to get into each business that was in the area. It will be a visible area. There is no apparent staging or laydown area for construction. A contractor would have to arrange that someplace else. But the selling price is $1.5 million to $1 million. We're a little unclear on this. Both figures have been kicked around in the past. The seller, while he has a sign out there, has not returned our calls or Susie's calls in the last 6 weeks. So is it available? Isn't it? We will assume it is because it has a for sale sign. On the other hand, the owner is not calling us back. The cost of the transmission line would be a little over $500,000. The estimated cost for boring under 36th Avenue, if things go reasonably well, would be $300,000. Now, we do know there is some running sand in that area. We do know that it's an old stream bed that could have big cobbles in it. Boring is not always a successful way to go. If we started boring and we couldn't handle the boring or it couldn't be handled, an open trench would be extremely deep and extremely wide. The cost of the easements or the condemnation, we put in $120,000 in our figuring on that. We don't know for sure if we could get all of the easements. We would need some, if you could go back to the site map, Marty. Across the road on lot 19, which is owned by Obadiah. He has plans for expanding his building. We would need to place some switch cabinets there, and our boring pit would be there, which would require a construction permit. And we do not know if he would allow that or not, or give us an easement willingly. And of course, we have to tear down or demolish a commercial building. We put in $150,000 for that. An estimate of the constructed substation cost would be $13.25 million. Site 1. Now, this site consists of 5 lots, and the owner is only willing to sell all or none. There is an office building in the foreground. It has 3 homes on it and a garage. We feel that we could sell the office building later, and that building has been constructed so it could go up another story. It's the easiest site for us to access. We would be coming right off of Arctic, across one of the lots, which is empty. The building is on 5A, and we would be building our substation on the 3 sites in the back. And so we don't have added easement costs that we would have with other sites.
Mayo, what was the number of the substation that pre-existed the building that was in that same location?
It was old substation 7, which has been replaced back in the 80s and is now north of Fireweed Lane on Arctic Boulevard, Madeira Villa. That lot 4, at one time, we did have a substation on that, but it was replaced and the land was sold. So the selling price on this is high. It's $3.5 million. And said it was valued at $2.3 million when it was put in a trust in 2007. And a recent appraisal value is $1,964,000, which was fair market value. It didn't really consider what the value was to ML&P. But immediately available is important to us. And you'll see why later on in this discussion. Okay, and the cost of the transmission line is also lower, about $1.5 million. Let's move on.
Just a question on that one. Would that office building stay in place
Yes,
and you would sell it or something like that?
we would sell it or use it or,
Okay. But you have
lease
to
it
buy
out.
it in order to get
yes,
access to
we
the
have to buy it.
vacant land. Okay, thank you.
But it can work for us.
Okay. Is that the sales price included in the final construction cost? If you were to sell that,
Yes.
would you
Yes.
subtract it from this
Mhm.
cost? Okay, thank you.
No, it's included in that number that's on the paper.
So if they sold, it'd be more, it'd be less.
Okay,
If
so
we could offset the cost.
So this still contains the lot with the office building, this number?
The
You have not sold it in order to arrive at 13.8.
13.8 million includes the money we would have received from the sale of the
Oh,
building.
okay, good. Thank you.
So you better tell us how much you think the building's worth.
1.2 million.
So it's actually, the
That's
construction cost would
appraised
be
value,
more than
current
that.
appraised value.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So basically, instead of 13, what was it, 13.8, it'd be 14,
15 million.
15. Okay, thank you.
Site 6 is Arctic Benson Park. It's across from AWWU, right on Arctic Boulevard. The problem with Site 6, while it would be ideal, is that it's a park. It's a lengthy process for a dedicated park, and we are not considering it due to time constraints on that. The cost would be unknown and would depend perhaps on what we were required to do by other parkland, build a community center on the remainder of the park, other amenities that would need to be added. So we don't have a cost on that site. The cost of the transmission to the site is modest. It's under $1 million. And the estimated constructed cost at that site would be a little over $13 million. But we did not have a cost to add in for what we felt that we might be required to go above and beyond. But the reason this site is not being given, not our first choice, is that it would take too long to get it. And if we could. I don't know that the assembly would be willing to agree to that.
I just want to clarify.
I've got some people lined up already, Harriet.
Okay.
Jennifer, do you want to start questioning, or you want to finish?
Why don't we go through the whole thing?
Once you finish, then we'll go to questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
and-
We'll let Harriet.
Because some of these questions may be, come up. Okay, now we get into some of the hard part. Considering what if this construction is delayed, because time equals money in this. If it is delayed, we'll have reduced reliability in that area. Immediately, we could do a three-way tap at the corner of 36th and Benson. That would cost about $250,000. And we could take power that way from the new plant if it was in place. Another way we could get some of this electricity or power to our system would be by wheeling over CEA lines if they were available. There's a couple ways that could be done, but they're going to charge us wheeling costs. And if we're taking this cheaper generation from the new plant, it doesn't help our distribution. While we can get the power, we still can't get all the distribution out to where we need it without the new substation. So we need the new plant, or the new substation, by December 2012. And We're looking at wheeling charges that we're assuming to be $10 per megawatt hour. It would need to be negotiated. That is what Chugach has recently quoted HEA on some wheeling that they are doing for them. And the do-nothing cost, if we didn't make any arrangements to get the power from the new efficient generation, would be between 10 million a year if you just considered additional gas costs. And if you add in maintenance, it would be 15 million a year would be getting. The costs associated with the delay, as I said, we have $250,000 to do a freeway terminal construction for relaying through there. And we also would have reliability problems if we were going on that, because if one of the lines would go down, all of them would go down until we found the problem and brought the other two back up. Nearly 200,000 in wheeling charges, which would be based on a 3-week delay. It would be considerably more if the time went on beyond that. And that, again, is only if the CEA line loading would allow us to wheel over their lines. And this, in our analysis, only affects the sites 3, 6, and 8 for a total delay cost of close to 500,000 a month, because site 1, we did not consider that because the land is readily available and waiting for sale. So constructed substation costs. We added in 9 factors as we were looking at things. The initial purchase price, the easements that would be required, the transmission costs to bring lines in, the distribution costs, the demolition of buildings if needed, boring if needed, the substation equipment cost, the substation construction cost, and these would vary. Some have laydown areas, some don't. Relocation of non-ML&P utilities, because at one of the sites, Site 3, we would have to relocate some Chugach electric circuits there too. And the sale of usable buildings after construction of the substation, and delay, which can be very costly. So our initial decision considerations, analysis considerations, considered the initial cost of the constructed substation and service cost, and delay cost added in. So as they shake out, we're going to show this to you in a couple different ways. The land cost, the construction costs, delay costs, and what the total costs of these various sites would be. As you can see, the one between 30th and Benson on Chichaco, because of bringing in 3 transmission lines that far, is the most costly site. Another way of looking at it is just the land cost and the total costs of construction. Site 6, the park, is the lowest cost, but may not be achievable in the required time frame if it's achievable at all. Site 3, the Parting World, is a small, high-risk site that would require underground bores and old stream bed, and would find resistance in the business community in the area. They have suffered for several years. in the past and are going to again, and would require extraordinary coordination with websites and Twitters and some of the things we're really not into yet, although we're headed in that direction as far as Twitter. And Site 1, the big advantage of that is it's readily available and requires no easements or doesn't have any other significant risks. So as a business decision, we have a willing seller and a willing buyer. The site is worth more to us than it may be to somebody else. And the Site 1 versus the park would be 338,650 more than the park, or it is 138,650 more than the second most cost, or second cheapest site, the Site 3. But Site 3 does have risk applied to it. We kind of skipped by the graph real fast, maybe they want to take a look at it. Okay. This is a graph showing how the substation costs compare also. Now we need to look at our envisioned project timeline. We know that the power plant will be coming online there in December of 2012. So it is critical that we get started on this project by having site acquisition just as soon as we possibly can, because the longer we delay getting a site, the farther this timeline is going to be pushed out for the various tasks for the construction of the site. And every time it's pushed out, it's going to be at least another $500,000 a month. And we won't have the reliability in the area that we need for this growing load in the midtown.
I just want to add something on this timeline that you see here. The last bullet is the milestone for SPP Online. And you can see that the way we have the project scheduled out is already past that date. But there's actual places in this schedule where we could gain efficiencies. MOA purchasing, and we've allowed 80 days in this schedule. Maybe we can cut that down to 30 days to expedite bidding and award of equipment and construction contract procurement. So there is room in the schedule. This is to shorten it up is what I'm saying.
But that is a normal time that it would take
This
us
is the
to
normal
get it through
time.
purchasing. So, other questions?
Although we've got a few questions. Jennifer, you're first, ma'am.
Are there any other parcels of land, municipal parcels of land within this block?
The only other municipal parcel would be at AWWU.
Is there any
Headquarters.
co-location there?
Hmm?
Could there be any
You would have to
co-location?
build a parking garage, and
Well,
that has problems in that neighborhood because of lighting and accessibility, things that go on in that neighborhood. We did, once the AWWU people said that they really didn't want a garage built that we would build on top of or below, which would add a great deal of cost. I mean, it went over this because of the requirement of their parking as opposed to what we would require in space. So that's why it was taken off the table, because they were not willing to lose their space for a period of time as we did construction.
well,
Because they have
they're
a small
also
park lot.
planning on putting another building in that area in the future.
So that's the only other piece of land available.
Yeah, only other municipal land.
And then, and real estate services would be the one negotiating as far as the property
They have been all along.
all along and
And they met with the 80-some-year-old lady who has a 90-year-old tenant in the next house. And so we have an 80-some-year-old, a 90-some-year-old.
we have no appraisal.
Of what?
Yes.
We do have an appraisal, we have
Yes.
an assessment or appraisal.
Appraisal.
We have an appraisal.
Yeah. And a phase one?
Hmm?
And a phase one?
The
Phase one
appraisal for
environmental,
site one, yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh, and an environmental.
So is your appraisal, so the recent appraisal is under 2 million?
Correct.
And the selling price is 3.5.
Anything else, Jennifer? LB, you're next, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr.
You're
Chairman.
next, Paul.
My question was just trying to pull together the total cost of each site, and I think that on page 23, my question is answered.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Harriet, then Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Site 8, the Chichaco site,
Yeah.
is it necessary to do overhead lines? I understand the
Yes,
cost
they're
of
transmission
Oh,
lines.
they cannot be underground?
No, they can't be underground.
In any
Big
way, shape, or
expense.
form?
Very, very expensive.
Just, it's the expense,
Mhm.
it's what is about at least 3 times.
And reliability.
Reliability,
And,
life expectancy goes down.
okay, and what is underneath the right-of-way where the lines would go? Are there structures there now?
There's a tattoo parlor,
Well, that's right, that's where that
Yeah.
old, that
and
looking
then
building
there's
is.
the
Okay,
old leather
Right.
shop
right, okay.
that is there.
And then the park site, that it only appears to, you only appear to be considering a small piece, about a quarter of the existing park, is that correct? But you're right, it would be difficult to change that, I think that park is pretty valuable to the children in that neighborhood, although they've had some issues, crime issues in the past.
Yes,
It
they
is,
have.
it is an appreciated park. Thank you, that's all.
Paul,
Uh,
then
now-
Ernie.
Are there more questions, or I have
We
one
have a
other
couple more
slide?
questions.
But, first of all, what is the, I guess, position of either MLP administration or the board on, is there a recommendation? I mean, I'm leaning, and it looks to me, Site 1 seems to make a lot of sense in a lot of ways, but there's an assumption you're selling the buildings. Now, for instance, if the outcome is that the ML&P uses the building for its own purposes, are we able to move away from another land lease somewhere that might have a cost savings as well?
I'd rather sell it
Rather sell it?
to CEA, the Artec group, someone who needs property. We really, our operations area, unless we're doing something jointly with CEA, this would not be a good location.
And is there a recommendation?
The board did, that we had staff come back to us no less than 3 times on this project. And we looked at it up and down, and we had a divided vote, but Site 1 was the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, there's one other thing we should consider or discuss and throw up there, slide 33.
Ernie, do you want to wait for your question? You want to answer your question? Get your question answered now.
Mr. Chair, one more
No,
question.
go ahead, I'll get it when you get it.
Okay.
Okay, so considering condemnation, we prefer not to condemn for a site, but it was brought up to us, okay, on Site 1, you have a willing seller, but why not just condemn 4 for 5 lots? And it certainly would increase the time delay. I have every reason to believe that she would fight that. I don't know that we could make the case for condemnation. Why would we say this is the only land we have to have just because she was a willing seller? Why aren't you condemning the mattress ranch, the Penny's warehouse, the strip mall on the corner. So I think that would be very problematic. And condemnation would certainly be litigated and would add to the final cost and add in delays. But it's something that we figured you might want to consider.
Ernie?
What is the likelihood that you would have any issues selling the building? It seems to me you need to recapture that 1.2 million in order to meet the costs that we proposed here.
Well, the building is in good shape, and it was constructed initially so another story could be put on it. I don't think we would have a problem selling the building.
Would be
But 2 years from now, is currently the real estate market somewhat stagnant, slowly going up. 2 years from now, who knows what the economy will be. But I think that we have a very good chance of selling it, and if not immediately, we certainly could make use of it until such time as.
Is it occupied currently?
yes,
Yeah.
So there are tenants in,
2 tenants. Well, actually 1 tenant.
so there.
Mrs. Starn had her husband built the building for her real estate practice and for other people to rent to pay off the cost. And she's down, I think, now to 1 tenant, two tenants.
Two,
Susie?
according to Susan.
And Mrs. Starn and us, we'd have to negotiate where they would move to while we did the construction, because we would take the parking spaces away as part of our construction process.
Okay, so they would need to be right regardless. Okay, now if I followed all the scenarios that you've given, this particular location has the least likelihood of extraordinary cost involved in it. You're not drilling, you're not doing, I mean, this appears to be a clean site that you can go on and build without the anticipation of cost overrun.
Mrs. Starn and her son, who's part of the trust, all agree that she was able to get her lower 48 relatives to agree that she would move into a condo downtown, still in our service territory, and give us the site, take over the building.
And it would seem to me that everybody that's been approached seems to be taking a shot at a little gouging, because I don't see any of them that are willing to sell.
After this presentation, as a public, let me tell you, the gouge factor is going to probably go up because of the what we have here is our need and our timeline.
Thank you.
I've got Harriet, Elvie, and Jennifer. Harriet?
Yeah, just a question on substation 7. Would that be decommissioned at some point, or can you continue to use it?
Oh, no, we will continue to use it. We
You just
have
can't,
to continue.
you just
to
can't
use
expand it.
that.
I'm saying once this new substation is in place, you need to.
We still, yes, we will maintain substation 7.
Okay. Do we need to worry about it because of the retaining walls?
Marty, there's a slide on sub 7, you can put up a picture.
I've been there, that's close to my neighborhood.
Well, it's
Okay.
recently built, and the walls were recently built under the codes at that time. A 7.5 earthquake here, so we can tell you what that would do to retaining walls, the best. So, but given what we have, what was built, that's for the time we feel comfortable.
And that's
Yes,
the,
and we would have to do farther excavation over to the west, up against the school property, and it would be very expensive to do a lot of excavation, put in several more retaining walls, and it's not an ideal location for serving the
I'm
load.
totally familiar with that neighborhood. And that's the Alaska Cleaners plant at the top of the
Yes.
hill.
Mhm. At the time we built it, Alaska Cleaners wasn't there.
Right. Thank you.
So,
Elvie, and then
Thank you, Mr.
Jennifer.
Chairman. I thought it was a building that I use, but it's not. It's something else, so I'm okay. Thank you.
yeah.
you all right? Debbie?
Are these boundaries flexible at all for your search area? Could you go like a block or two out?
We looked a block to the east, some of the properties that could be available. And one warehouse slash construction yard, not available for sale. We're not willing to talk to us about it.
Could I, Suzie? So you basically did take a little broader look at the parameters that were here.
Yeah,
And you didn't find anything except maybe one to the east, is what I'm hearing Mr. Posey say?
well, we found multiple lots, but none of them either A, fit the size, or when we looked on the west side of Arctic and came back to ML&P, they said, we really need to stick out on the east side. That utility corridor is running down the east side, we really need to focus on that side. The cost to burrow underneath were too great. So then we focused and just sort of narrowed it down. We checked at all the corners at Arctic and 36. There was Electrical Brotherhoods that building just on the south side of 36. They were somewhat interested. When he went back to his board, they were not interested in selling.
So you feel pretty confident based on your analysis that our choices are limited to these?
And yeah, because you go any further east and you're really in a residential area. And there aren't, there's maybe a couple small lots, but not large enough to facilitate the construction of this substation.
Any other questions? Yes,
One more
Harriet?
question, yeah. On page 9, you have a picture of these really tall transmission towers. Are those like the ones in East Anchorage that there was a big
March to the
thing
Sea of the Titans. Yes.
Yes.
Those are
Right.
the
Right.
structures.
Is that,
Yeah,
is,
that's the
Edited.
picture, and we added another tower
Right.
with this.
right, is this site the only one that would require these kinds of towers?
Yes,
The other 3 do not?
that's right.
Okay.
Let me clarify that, there'd be for the site 1, if you look at that picture on slide 9, there's one tower that has 2 arms sticking out, one on each side. That type of structure would have to be built along Arctic Boulevard from 36th up to Starn property. We have to double circuit that line to be able to get that power in from the new SPP plant.
Okay, so there will
Yeah,
be,
but we have an existing
if the Starn
transmission
site-
line along there.
the Starn site is the one that was
Right.
developed, then there will be.
It won't be as big as those, that was just, I just wanted to
That's what you
give you a
had,
concept
Andy.
of what it might look like. Because that's a 230 kV line, ours is only gonna be 115, so it's
Okay.
gonna be narrower and shorter.
Okay, thank you.
I think that concludes this meeting. Thank you very much for your time. Jim, when do you expect this to come in front of us?
As soon as possible, Mr. Chairman. We have our resolution, we're writing all of the necessary AMs, and we will get that to you. We would like some action at the latest, first meeting in April.
Okay. Yeah, my clerk would be very happy with an April meeting on this. We're jammed.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, that was fascinating.